Producer Daniel here. This episode includes discussions of self-harm and suicide. A fair warning, just in case you or someone who is listening is sensitive to these topics.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. My co-host today is anything but ordinary, a multifaceted artist of many mediums. Film, TV, music. He is a leading creative among a pack of vastly talented people out there in his generation. It is Alex Wolff, everybody. You may have seen Alex in his films like Hereditary, Oppenheimer, or recently A Quiet Place Day One, just to name a few. You might also have heard the music that he performs with his sibling as the band Nat and Alex Wolff, formerly known as the Naked Brothers Band. And they've gone from Nickelodeon to opening for Billie Eilish on her current tour. Not bad. Alex also stars in the new movie The Line, along with an incredibly stacked cast of up-and-comers. Lewis Pullman, Halle Bailey, Angus Cloud, rest in peace, and Denise Richards and John Malkovich anchoring with some impressive veteran presence. The Line is a campus thriller that plunges into the dangerous world of college fraternities and blind adherence to tradition. Alex stars as Tom, a scholarship student desperate to break free of his working class background, who is charmed by a prestigious fraternity that promises social status, but not without a perilous cost. It's a real nail-biter and a fantastic commentary on the world of fraternities, and you can stream it right now. But first, our interview with Alex Wolff. Alex Wolff, what else do the people need to know about you before we get going?
Nothing, except that my dad has been calling me about 30 times in the midst of you describing my any of my credits.
Hi, Mr. Wolff.
Thank you so much. Yeah, you are one of my faves, and you're so smart and so thoughtful, and it actually feels like you're interested in what people have to say, which is very, very rare.
Well, I appreciate that, because my least favorite thing about watching people have conversations or listening to it is when I feel like I'm listening to someone read a bullet point list of questions and not responding to the answers that they're getting. So.
Oh, yeah.
Just that's so interesting. And then not responding at all to what was interesting.
Well, see, that's so interesting. So anyway, when you were in camp.
Yeah. Is touring with all of these things coming out feel like as much as it sounds, or is it mostly fun?
Just fun. I mean, most of your life is as an actor, if we're just talking about the acting part of it, but as an artist in general, but as an actor, most of your life is devoted to getting really worried about what your next job will be, or if it's going to be good, if you did do a job, or, did you do a good job in that thing? And, am I wasting my life? So I think that to be doing a tour like this that I'm so excited about, like I'm really excited about the music we're playing live right now. And I worship and love Billy. And I am really proud of these projects that are coming out. When you can feel that all together, of course, there's a lot of anxiety and exhaustion, but the excitement sort of outweighs the exhaustion. If you have a big onslaught of things that you're excited about, it just energizes you. I think there's a crash after, and once they're all out, people see them, and, certain people like it, certain people don't. Then you crash and sleep for like a year. But I think I'm in a really nice spot right now where I just feel really lucky, really excited. And people say that all the time, but I really mean it.
And with, you are a veteran in this industry. You have been a professional for a very long time. You and your brother had the Naked Brothers Band, and you are a writer-director as well. And I think it's If She Burns, I believe, is the movie yes, that's your next writing directorial effort. And I've heard you mention just a little bit about that and, you're very excited about the cast you're working with, and you happen to have relationships with these people. And you are touring with Billie Eilish, and this is somebody who you have a personal relationship as well. And I wanted to talk about coming to a point in your career where you can cultivate projects and work with people who are a part of perhaps that sort of circle of trust or creation or community, as opposed to perhaps coming in cold earlier in your career?
That's a great question. I think if you can work with people that you really love, Well, it depends. I mean, if you're friends with people who are not good at stuff, then I guess it's not the same thing. But I've been really lucky in that a lot of my friends who are in the business, my some of my best friends are not in the business at all. But the people who are happen to be really good at what they do. And, Billy's like the voice of regeneration. And,
Uh,
um, Austin Abrams is one of the best actors in the world. And Victoria Pedretti and Justice Smith and Ace Butterfield, they're some of the best. So I think the thing that nobody tells you is that when you do work with those people, the actual work becomes better, I think, because you are more relaxed and happy to be there. And I think a lot of people just see it as like, oh, working with friends is comfortable, but I actually don't know that it's always comfortable. I think that it can be very comfortable, but I think the best part of it is that everyone feels very safe to try things. And you see why certain actors work with certain directors. It's not that they're necessarily complacent. I think it's a lot of times that they feel they trust that person, and they can actually take bigger swings with the people that they're close with. And I feel that way about everyone in my film. I feel that way about everyone in the line. The people I'm friends with, like Austin Abrams or Lewis Pullman or Grant Patrick Martin or Halle Bailey or the amazing Angus Cloud, who we tragically lost. But he was one of my best friends, and I felt very safe acting with him. And I just think it elevates the work. If you're lucky enough to have friends who are really good at their field.
and I'm sorry for the loss of your friend. And this is The Line is yet another movie where Angus Cloud gives a wonderful performance.
Unbelievable. He's just astounding.
And there was something like absolutely an experience of a lot of meaningful discomfort in watching The Line, and you talking about operating safely within discomfort and having an environment in which to like go to places that are not necessarily closely like sweetly held, having the ability to operate freely as an actor. And when I was reading interviews you've been doing for The Line, I saw one where you said that you were interested in movies about young people struggling with themselves.
Yeah.
And it feels like that as a category touches on the character that we're going to discuss today, and also seems to sort of emphasize the need for that safe place of creativity if there's such a strong interest for you in the fertile and tumultuous ground of young people struggling with themselves.
Well, I love that. I mean, your questions are always going to be more elegant and elegant than my answer. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested in people struggling with themselves in general. I think those are the films that I gravitate towards. But certainly because I'm 26, turning 27, I think that people struggling with themselves in their 20s, of course, is going to really appeal to me. But as far as, a movie like The Line, I really don't think we would have had the movie that we have had we not all been very closely knit group, because there's something very, very dangerous about this movie. I think dangerous in a lot of ways, but I think one of the ways is that it is, there are moments that could flirt with cliches, and there are things that could be things we've seen before. There are also moments we could pull punches and not go all the way. And I think because we're all really good friends, we really sat in the discomfort and the ugliness of ourselves. We didn't sort of project an image onto this of what we thought these kids would be like. And instead, we just went from a part of ourselves we were ashamed with. And I think that all of us sort of started from that place, and it made it a lot more nuanced of a picture, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that like that aspect of sort of confronting the menace of one's interiority, I think is very much like how I approached watching the character that you brought to the table, which is Timothy Hutton's Conrad from Ordinary People. And that was very much how I was watching that performance as well, like having watched The Line and reading interviews around this and trying to like very much extrapolate you into watching his performance. I wanted to hear about your first exposure to this movie.
Yeah, I'm so happy to talk about. I find it so much easier to talk about films that I'm not involved with. I find it to be, I'm very close to them, but they're also something outside of myself. Ordinary People I saw in 7th or 8th grade, and I saw it at a time where I really, really needed that character. I think one of the reasons was a lot of characters who are stricken with grief or stricken with pain, there's something sort of lobotomized about them. And though he has elements of that, I found it to be really complex and moving, that he was full of a lot of energy and a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of theory and a lot of forward moving angst. And a lot of movies, especially that were just coming out at that time when I was like 13, 14, were about these sort of sad sack leading men that were sort of feeling sorry for themselves and maybe were impish. And I didn't connect with that feeling. But I connected with the pain of those characters, but I never connected with their sort of passive nature. And I felt that Ordinary People, what I thought was so, I just love it so much, as he is, though he's, intensely sympathetic and intensely apologetic, he is also really active, and he's really kinetic. He's sort of, at times, he's like an emotional bulldozer, with his mom or with his therapist, and there's all this undealt with rage and misshapen grief sort of gotten pent up and metabolized and I wouldn't say the wrong way, but it's metabolized in an uncomfortable way and an uncomfortable part of his body. So I think that character's nuance and energy has spoken to me throughout the years. It spoke to me when I was a teenager. It spoke to me after high school. It speaks to me now. It's one of these characters that has really stood the test of time for me emotionally. And we'll see when, I'm a parent and whatever, and then later on in life, it still holds up. But I believe that it is the greatest lead character, or one of the great lead characters who's ever been created. And partially because of Timothy Hutton's unbelievable portrayal.
And Ordinary People being the story of a family, a sort of upper middle class family outside of Chicago and Illinois, and we enter their lives after Timothy Hutton, their son Conrad, has returned home after a stay at a mental health facility because he tried to take his own life, and this happens in the wake of the family tragically losing their eldest son named Buck, and everybody sort of grieving going forward with that, with Timothy Hutton being our point of view character. And what I found, like that scene where he finally has an explosion at his mother, played by Mary Tyler Moore, which it's just...
That's my favorite scene in the movie.
It's really important to try to hurt me, isn't it?
Don't you have that backwards?
Oh? And how do I hurt you? By embarrassing you in front of a friend? Poor Beth. She has no idea what her son is up to. He lies and she believes every word of it.
I didn't lie.
You did. You lied every time you came into this house at 6:30. If it's starting all over again, the lying, the covering up, the disappearing for hours, I will not stand for it. I can't stand it. I really can't.
Well, don't then. Go to Europe.
Connie, now, Connie.
Well, the only reason
Connie,
she cares, the only reason she gives a fuck about it,
Connie.
is because someone else knew about it first.
Just stop it, Connie.
No, you
Stop
tell her to stop it. You never tell her a goddamn thing. And I know why she never came to the hospital. She's busy going to goddamn Spain and goddamn Portugal. Why should she care if I'm hung up by the balls out there?
Maybe this is how they sit around and talk at the hospital, but we're not at the hospital now.
You never came to the hospital.
Connie,
How do you
your
know
mother
about the
did come to the
hospital?
hospital. Now, you know that she did. She had the flu.
It's so amazing to see Mary Tyler Moore in this mode. Like, to see the Mary Tyler and everything that comes with that. Like, the performance stands on its own, but if you know anything about Mary Tyler Moore and her perception in, like, American popular culture, there's such, like, an extra, like, lead weight dropped on your chest watching her performance. But where he blows up at her and then he runs to his room and he immediately, like, there you see like the whole character sort of in relief, where he's working with his therapist on becoming somebody who actually will express the honesty within, but then immediately feeling so much regret and shame around that. And in the entire talk with his dad, Donald Southern Afterlat, never takes his hands off his eyes.
It's one of my favorite parts ever.
Amazing.
He goes, just tell her I'm sorry. And when he just goes, it's all jello and pudding with you, Dad. You don't see things. And he goes, she hates me. Don't you see that she hates me? And then he goes, your mother doesn't hate you, Conrad. And you see, without even seeing his eyes, it choked me up. He just goes, okay.
She was upset, Conrad. Your mother was hurt because you quit the swim team. I don't understand it myself.
No, I don't mean just now. Don't you see? I don't mean just today.
What then? Explain it to me.
I can't. Everything's jello and pudding with you, Dad. You don't see things.
What things? What things? Please, I want you to tell me.
That she hates me. Can't you see that?
Your mother doesn't hate you, Conrad.
All right. You're right. She does. Please leave me alone now.
He realizes that his dad is not ready, that he's ahead of his dad in this process of seeing what's going on. And he can't, you can, what is it? You lead a horse to water. Like, I think he's trying, but what can he do? What can he do at that point? So he just lets it go. Because I think he's humiliated that he had that outburst, but it actually is kind of a moment of relief for the audience that the stuff that's been under the surface is now coming to fruition.
When he enters therapy, when Conrad enters therapy, he says his goal is to, he wants more control over things. And his therapist is like, I'm not really a big fan of control, so I don't really know if I can help you there.
Control's a tough nut.
Yeah, control's a tough nut. Judd Hirsch. My God, Judd Hirsch. You're watching a character yearn for the candor and the no bullshit life that he had in the hospital when everything was all out in the open. But then you watch him struggle through the act of actually achieving that sort of honesty for and within himself. And it's just I watch it now and it's like, man, I know the conversation about trauma and horror and let's talk about therapy and therapized language. That's a sort of newer thing that has gone on to sort of mass cultural significance and accessibility. But you watch this movie made in 1980 and the delicate way that it handles him discussing these really agonizing topics and the stigma put on discussing mental health at the time. This movie feels so fresh in 2024.
I know. I feel the same way. And he's a fresh therapist. He's really grew up at times, and he goes, back to the rotten kid routine.
I'm so tired.
Yeah, well, that's a hell of a secret you've been keeping on yourself.
So what do I do now?
Recognize her limitations?
You mean she can't love me?
Oh, kiddo, no. Like she can't love you enough. Don't blame her for not loving you more than she's able.
But she loves my father. I know she loved my brother. It's me.
Now we're back to the rotten kid routine. She can't love you because you're unlovable. Where does it leave your dad? How come he loves you? You're a rotten kid, doesn't he know that?
That's different. He feels responsible.
Well, apparently when that movie came out, so many people went to therapy. He's a great therapist, I think.
He's really the case for a therapist.
And they're a great combination. And I mean, that scene when he goes, how do you know? And he says, 'cause I'm your friend.
Scared.
Feelings are scary. And sometimes they're painful. And if you can't feel pain, then you're not going to feel anything else either. You know what I'm saying? You're here and you're alive. And don't tell me you don't feel that.
It doesn't feel good.
It is good. Believe me.
You know.
Because I'm your friend.
Yeah.
You're my friend? He goes, count on it. I mean, Brad is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in a movie. And I've seen a lot of movies, but that is this movie, it's strange how if you can watch it at any time, and for some reason it doesn't feel in a time period. It feels very specifically 1980, the sweaters and haircuts and everything. And yet so precisely drawn with a X-Acto knife that it feels like the movie could have come out at any time, and put on 80 sweaters or something. It just feels like the most radical movie. It feels like a radical movie whenever you watch it to me. I just find the movie to hold up so well. And I don't think it ever won't, because I think that families won't ever stop having feelings, these sort of ugly feelings of blame and guilt and resentment and love. Oh God, I love it so much.
I was really taken aback by when he goes on the date with the girl at school who's been, who's been kind of flirting with Lovely, and it's nice. And she asks him, because you can see the scars on his wrist from his attempt, and she asks him about it. And I thought it was really fascinating how, again, in the movie coming out when it did, and the changing mores around these kinds of conversations. And he tells her, he's like, wow, no one's ever asked me that actually outside the hospital, like what it was like. And there's such a not detached, but calm and tender way that he discusses the feeling of relinquishing himself to self-harm that I felt was a really kind way to allow a character to talk about self-harm without making them seem broken into pieces. And I feel like I feel like it's difficult to find that even now, like the way language has changed around it. Like this scene just feels like it just encapsulated that so well.
I think he feels too big. I think the idea, the part of it is that there's maybe some kind of stigma, maybe within life, but also within movies, that if someone's self-harming, they're so fragile that, if the wind blew them, they'd fall between the cracks and the floorboards. But in this movie, that's not the case. He's really opening up to her, and he says, it's not like he's about to cry or anything. I think he's really glad to be sharing. He says, well, then, it's like there's a black hole and then you are the hole. And, that's such a deep way. And you can tell it freaks her out a little bit. And you can tell, she's just not quite there.
Mm-hmm. One of the gifts of movies is how we grow up with them and they grow up with us, and how, like, I was talking to a friend recently, we were speaking about the movie Interstellar, and he was talking about how when he first watched it, he felt like the Matthew McConaughey character, but then more and more he starts to feel like the John Lithgow character, who is the father-in-law of Matthew McConaughey. And as this movie travels in time with you and you inhabit more characters, like, what as an actor, like, what is your sort of actor lens, your performer lens on the character of Conrad?
Rewatching the movie, every time I do, I try very hard to silence the actor lens or filmmaker lens, or even if I try to watch it through that lens, the movie has such a gravitational pull. It has such an emotional drive and power that it buries all sort of intellectual feelings, about analyzing.
That's beautiful.
I think it's above that. I really do. I think it goes above that. I feel that way about Bergman.
Is that experience an exception for you, that something is able to sort of pull over that impulse?
I would say I am actually quite gifted at losing myself as a fan. I think I'm pretty good at doing that. But it's also very easy to flip that switch on. If you turn on certain movies that are just, they beg to be picked apart, and they beg to be sort of watched with a pencil and paper. Some of them yearn for that. But there's like some movies like Bergman, like there's a movie Through a Glass Darkly, and it's very interesting. When I watched that movie, and I've watched it, maybe like 30 times now, I often go to that movie as a reference point for directing and acting, and I believe it's such a masterpiece. But always about 20, 30 minutes in, I lose myself in the emotional, or I notice new little emotional things, and my analytical brain starts to be taken over by my stomach. And that's sort of my favorite thing in the world. Taxi Driver, same thing. I want to be taken out of that feelings of analyzing, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be taken in by the story.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back with Alex Wolff, and then I will have one thing before I go about the new wonderful little movie Conclave. So stick around for that.
Say you like video games, and who doesn't?
I mean, some people probably don't.
Okay, but a lot of people do. So say you're one of those people, and you feel like you don't really have anyone to talk to about the games that you like.
Well, you should get some better friends.
Okay, yes, you could get some better friends, but you could also listen to Triple Click. a weekly podcast about video games hosted by me, Kirk Hamilton.
Me, Maddie Myers.
And me, Jason Schreier. We talk about new releases, old classics, industry news, and whatever, really.
We'll show you new things to love about games, and maybe even help you find new friends to talk to about them.
Triple click. It's kind of like we're your friends. Find us at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Jesse Thorne, the founder of Maximum Fun, and I have a special announcement. I'm no longer embarrassed by my brother and me. You know, for years, each new episode of this supposed advice show was a fresh insult, a depraved jumble of erection jokes, ghost humor, and frankly, this is for the best, very little actionable advice. But now, as they enter their twilight years, I'm as surprised as anyone to admit that it's gotten kind of good. Justin, Travis, and Griffin's witticisms are more refined, like a humor column in a fancy magazine. And they hardly ever say bazinga anymore. So, after you've completely finished listening to every single one of all of our other shows, why not join the McElroy brothers every week for My Brother, and Me?
You know, what we see with Conrad, and this is, this could just feel like stretching it too much, but again, because like watching it was like the composite of you sort of in my mind. Like, I think it was interesting to sort of watch him back away from the sort of like the ritualized process of connecting to the other boys around him and have that not really relate to him anymore, and you coming off this project that was based around the ritualization of like male connectivity, but to like two men seemingly like struggling, young men struggling with the mores of how males are meant to relate with each other, and how you said like prepping for the line felt like kind of visiting Mars in understanding like the matriculation and socialization of fraternity culture, because you very much grew up an artist.
Well, I'll say, one of the huge differences is Conrad is far more empathetic and kind than Tom. Just, I'd say, Tom is much more morally ambiguous, though I think you feel for him. And he's very insecure. I think that Conrad is a little less blocked. He's a little less, he's a little more in touch with the pain of the universe, where I think Tom is trying everything he can to deny that part. That by way of Conrad being so deep in therapy, Tom, I think, wouldn't dare, especially at this time in his life. Maybe towards the end, but I think that Conrad doesn't cling to an idea of masculinity quite as much as Tom does. I think Tom really does have these sort of antiquated ideas of masculinity sort of deep inside him. And that could stem from all the different things. The fact that his dad died young, and he kind of doesn't really have any male role models except for these men who do value this very old-fashioned idea of what it is to be a powerful man. But I think that he needs that sort of those rituals, and he really needed some kind of tradition, some kind of activity with something bigger than himself. He just got sold the wrong one. He got sold one that betrayed him. Where I think Conrad, for all the pain that he's been through, is very close to the ground and very close to what makes someone sensitive, and closer to an artist. I think he's closer to me as a person. Where I think Tom, the beautiful part about Tom is that I find it constantly difficult to land on my feelings about Tom. I find it very difficult to sympathize with him in various moments, but I also or you know what? I always find it easy to sympathize with him. I don't always find it easy to empathize with him. I don't always find it easy to root for him, but I do feel his pain. But I love that. I love the way you've sort of lined these two movies up. And I like that they're sort of totally different from each other, those two characters. And yet I do feel connected to both of them.
as somebody who is, clearly well read into movies, like I wondered if, I remember when I watched All About Eve for the first time, I decided I wanted to watch every Betty Davis movie, and I wanted to find the one where she said, "Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night." And it happened to be that was the first Betty Davis movie I picked off the shelf, didn't know it. And I remember watching that movie and just was like, this was high school, and it was like a late night rental from Hollywood Video, and I was just blown away with what I was seeing. Like, wow, like characters can be like this? And it's from 1955, I think. And I wondered, as somebody who clearly like goes into the archives, like talking about like that get lost in it quality that you get from Bergman, when you find yourself wanting to like really chew on a character piece, do you find yourself gravitating toward more archival cinema, or do you find the room that characters given or the way that characters treated as satisfying in more contemporary films? Like, do you kind of align emotionally with one era or the other?
Well, it's kind of like what we're talking about with Ordinary People. Like, I don't know that I believe in the idea of expired viewing in that if it's great, like I went, I saw Seven Samurai with my brother in theaters, and that could have been made today. I mean, every single aspect of it could have been made today. And certain movies are really dated, and that's, I do think that that's just a fault in the film itself. I believe that nothing has to be expired viewing. I watched 8.5, and I think that is as modern of a movie as anything. I watched, My Night at Maud's, Eric Romer. That feels like a romantic comedy that could have come out today. And then there are certain things that are cringy and hard to watch because they are embracing some kind of shallow stylistic thing, and it's still above stake. I'd say, the joke with my friends is that I never see anything modern, and that, they'll walk in and, I'm always watching some Mitsuguchi, black and white thing, but it's not true. I thought All of Us Strangers had a level of sophistication that I hadn't seen in years. I think that same thing with Zone of Interest, or same thing with, you see how that is as sophisticated as Opening Night, as sophisticated as, Autumn Sonata, as sophisticated as Midsommar. I'm someone who really follows, if something is grounded in itself and grounded in humanity, I'm into it.
Well, I want to give us room to expound. So I guess I'm just laying the runway for our sort of like encapsulative thoughts. And one of those being, do you find that do you process yourself through your work? Or is that a separate sort of action to where it's like, no, my work's not my therapy? Or is that overlap inevitable?
I'm not sure. I think that people around me would be able to answer that more. I think that I find great catharsis and great disappointment in work. And I know that I do process things. I know that I do learn. I know that I do lose. I know that I do gain. I find it to be a very vast process trying to work as an actor, as a songwriter, as a filmmaker, whatever. It's all the same thing. It's just trying to drill down into myself. But I don't think that, art should be a means to healing. I think that it is a little trite, is a little cute. And maybe I've thought at certain points that it would be, but I think inevitably there is some healing. I think inevitably, but I wouldn't say depend on it. I'd say that's a special treat if there is healing. But I do believe that if you're not entirely exposed, you are not doing it. If you are completely on the verge of total failure and total, if you're not on the verge of total failure, I do think that maybe you're not pushing it far enough. That's for me. That if I'm not, like if I am feeling like, well, I know what I'm doing, usually it's not very good. I've seen, there's just been lots of times where I've been like, okay, I know what I'm doing. And then I really blow it. And I just watch it and I realize I fucking blew it. Where if I feel really on the edge, like really like, what the hell is this? What the hell am I doing? Sometimes there's moments where even I can feel okay about it and I'm my meanest critic.
Have you seen final product of your work where you knew you held back and you were like, I can see it, I didn't go far enough?
I don't even watch myself anymore. I mean, I mean, I'm the worst judge of myself. It barely even gets to the acting. I'm so focused on how big my nose is and my eyebrows and just, the atrocity that is my face on screen that I barely even get to the acting.
I would also wonder then what is the thing that pushes through to make this whole endeavor for you a fulfilling and sad, being the hardest critic on yourself that you are? What is the thing that helps outweigh the anxiety or the doubt? Like, what is the fuel that feeds the determination that makes this career that is at times impossible still the one you are called to do?
I mean, it's amazing. If you get to do it, even with the doubt and all that stuff, it's like, that's such a small price to pay. I mean, it obviously, your own issues with your own self-worth and your confidence and all that, sort of just comes with the territory, but the actual doing of it, I mean, I couldn't do anything else. And I think that if I did do anything else, I would be so severely bored, I would just cut my limbs off, like it is such an unbelievable privilege. It's why it's hard when people are whining about like, oh, this was so hard. And it's such a joy. It is so surreally incredible. Even the really hard times that you're doing a job or stuff is emotionally, whatever, like, I can't think of a more exhilarating thing to do than making movies or making music. It's like, I really can't. I mean, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Well, I think that the greatest thing in the world will be our punctuation mark on the end of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, literally, unless you were like an NBA basketball player, I don't know what the comparison would be. That
second choice is NBA star.
No, that's first choice. If I had a choice, I would be an NBA player.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time today and your insights and for bringing such a wonderful movie to the table to discuss. I have had a wonderful time digging deep into ordinary people and your psyche.
Let's keep doing it. Let's keep talking about ordinary people. We should have a podcast devoted to ordinary people. I could talk about it like 10 episodes.
Listen, there was 1 minute heat, and that was literally 1 minute of heat every episode. So 1 minute ordinary people is absolutely an option.
We could.
We could.
We could do it.
Between all your projects, you just let me know when. Thank you to Alex Wolff for a tremendous conversation. It is only tremendous conversations when you talk to Alex Wolff. What a guest, what a talent. And remember, you can stream The Line right now and see Alex and his brother on tour with Billie Eilish in a city near you, I'm imagining. And now that one thing before I go, I just gotta say, guys, Conclave. I saw a tweet. I was already excited about this cool premise, like getting into the nitty gritty of like the Cardinals in Conclave. Cool, fun, intrigue. But then I saw somebody on Twitter describe it as if Gossip Girl was set among a bunch of cardinals choosing the next pope. Phenomenally accurate description. Rafe Fiennes plays a put upon cardinal whose job is to sort of marshal the proceedings. He's I don't know, is the manager of the conclave? I don't know what the specific title of that is. But it is him overseeing these proceedings in which he himself is a candidate also for pope, and he is balancing the wants and ambitions of the different factions of cardinals, the traditionalists versus the progressives, Stanley Tucci representing the latter, and John Lithgow is there as a sort of star cardinal who was at one time close to the recently passed pope, who might have some skeletons in his closet that would obstruct his ascendance to the papacy. And I mean, there is intrigue, there is lying, there is backstabbing, there are grand reveals of the truth in public forums, there is a wonderful, discreet little turn by Isabella Rossellini as a nun who knows more than she is initially letting on. It's so good, you guys. It's so good. This feels like, you know, that category of like people that call them like movies for grown-ups. This is a great movie for grown-ups. If this like snuck in and won like best actor for Ralph Fiennes and like best original screenplay, if it was original, I don't know if this is based off a book. I apologize. Didn't do my homework on that one. A screenplay award. Amazing. I'd be fully behind it. It's a fun time at the movies. If you've watched trailers for it and been like, maybe it's a little serious, maybe it's a little talky, maybe I'll be a little sleepy in this. Yeah, I think the intrigue will get you through. And the score also plays so often like the most suspenseful crime thriller you could watch, or even lightly like a horror score. Really carries you through the suspense in this film. It's great. It's bitchy. It's cheeky. It's incredibly well acted. A phenomenal ensemble. And I couldn't recommend it enough. Go support a fun drama that is a feast for an ensemble of thespians in Conclave. And that is our show. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I am Jor Crew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Guesias. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.